Good morning. Today on Obsessed DIY, I'm going to change the oil on my daughter's 2013 Honda Civic LX. It's a 1.8 liter four cylinder, and it's just your standard everyday Honda Civic. So first thing I'm doing here is you have to get the car off the ground so you can get under and access the drain plug. You can use either jack stands, or in my case, I'm using Rhino ramps to drive the car up on the ramps and get it elevated such that I can get underneath. I take the ramps, I line them up. I use these rubber mats to ensure that the ramps don't slide when you hit them with the front wheels. They work pretty good. They're old floor mats out of an old car that we used to have. And in this case, they work perfectly to keep the ramps stable and keep them from sliding. So I line the ramps up to make sure I don't drive off the edges. I know that's kind of obvious, however, I think it's probably happened in a few garages before. So I've never done it, but as long as you align them straight with the wheels, you shouldn't have any issue whatsoever. So I'm gonna drive the car up on the ramps here. Keep your foot on the brake along with your other foot on the gas to make sure you don't rock back and forth and spin the ramps out from under your tires. Constant pressure here, driving right up. And once you crest the top of the ramp, you'll kind of feel the car hit the stop on the ramp. And I'm just taking a look there to make sure I'm on top of the ramps and not still going up. Pulled the emergency brake, popped the hood, and pretty much ready to go now. Alright, now it's time to gather some tools up. You'll need various tools to complete the job. First things first here is to get the hood open, prop it up, and get ready to grab all the tools necessary to do the job. I use a light so I can see a little better underneath the car. I think it's also going to help here with the video, so you can see kind of what I'm doing underneath. It's just a simple plug-in light, shop light. I also grabbed some paper towels. I've got a catch pan for the oil. You'll need a 17mm socket. In my case, I'm using a 1/2" drive ratchet with a 1/2" drive deep well 17mm. You'll also potentially need some type of oil filter wrench to get the oil filter off if you can't get it off by hand. Typically, sometimes you can spin them with your hand, or you can use some kind of strap wrench or an oil filter wrench that goes over the back side of the filter and lets you spin it off with a wrench. In this case, I've got a strap wrench, and that's what I'm grabbing there. You also need a Phillips screwdriver to take off the bottom pan. So there you see my catch pan, my funnel, my ramps, the Rhino ramps. There's my ratchet, my oil filter wrench, and some sockets. And I believe again it's a 17mm for this car. So now going underneath the hood, typically you want to at least pull the dipstick, let a little bit of air get in behind the oil, so when you go to drain it, it flows a little bit better. Going underneath the car, you'll take a screwdriver. These cars have a kind of a flimsy metal pan that covers up the area where the oil drain plug and the oil filter is. So there's 4 Phillips head screws. You just spin those off, put them aside to gain access. Got to be a little bit careful with these screws. They're kind of cheap aluminum, and there's no need to over tighten these screws. Just kind of be gentle with them because they're screwing into plastic. So you don't want to strip them out and ruin the plastic inserts. And once you get that loose, comes right off, and then you have full access to the drain plug and the oil filter. So looking at the bottom of the engine there, it actually says it on the Honda at the bottom of the pan. It says oil, and it gives an arrow. So you just break that drain plug loose, grab you some paper towels, and try to make sure you keep the drain plug in your fingers. When the oil comes shooting out, you don't really want to let go of the drain plug and have it go in the catch pan. Then you got to fish it out with your hand. Here I'm struggling a little bit with the crush washer. I want to make sure that you get that crush washer to come off with the drain plug so you don't drop it in the oil as well. So I was able to do it, keep it in my hand, and then of course you just put the drain plug aside while the oil drains. Should only take a few minutes for the oil to drain out. Typically I just let it go, walk away, take a little break while it's draining. But with the magic of video editing here, I'm gonna cut that short and edit out the wait time. I usually take 5-10 minute break, let the oil completely drain out, but the large majority of it drains out pretty quickly, as you can see here. So once the oil's drained, you want to inspect your drain plug and washer, make sure it's still in good condition. You can buy replacement washers. You do not need to replace the washer every time you change the oil, despite what you read online. Again, if you want to, go right ahead. But I've found as long as it's in good condition and you didn't mar it up somehow or break it, it's just fine. So here I'm cleaning up the drain plug, taking a look at it, making sure the crush washer is good. In this case, it looks fine. So I'm going to put that back in, tighten it down by hand. Make sure you don't cross thread it. You cross thread these things, you got major problems. Wipe up the oil as it drips down the pan. Take your ratchet, tighten it up, and you don't have to gorilla tighten these things. Here you'll see me get it snug and then give it one little bump. So I got it snug there. Now I got a little bump there. It's perfectly tight and ready to move on to the next step. So here I'm removing the oil filter. It's kind of tight on these cars to get in there with a wrench, but it can be done with various different types of wrenches. I just choose to use this one because it's what I have, and typically you just want to break the filter loose so you can spin it off by hand. So once you get that broken free, it's a matter of spinning it off by hand. It is messy. You're gonna make a mess. It's just part of doing oil changes. But as long as you can center your catch pan underneath, you can catch most of the oil and not make too much of a oily mess underneath the car. Let that drain a little bit. Get some of that excess oil out, and then just spin the filter off. Once you get the filter off, I typically just lower it down and dump it right into the catch pan and then deal with it later. There you go. See, there's quite a bit of oil still in the filter, so you're gonna make more of a mess, but it's not a big deal. All right, so going back on with a new filter, I always take a little bit of fresh oil, or in this case, I just used the oil that came out, and it doesn't matter. Um, this is a Bosch filter that I picked up for this car. Pretty good filter. It's not the best, it's not the worst, but it works just fine. Get that filter on there. Don't cross thread it. Should spin right on. Tighten it up by hand. And again, don't gorilla tighten these things, but in this case I have this little oil filter wrench that I like to give a few spins, and I believe a 15/16 inch wrench goes on the end of this thing and allows you to tighten it down. Again, you can see I'm only going about a half a turn past hand tight once I got it on there and snug. So tighten it down. Don't over tighten it, because you can crush it and strip out the threads on the oil filter. And then pull the cap off, and that's it. Oil filter replaced. So going up to the top side, you got the oil that you drained out. Typically, I just pour it back into an old container of oil that I used in a previous oil change. This allows me to take the container of used oil to the auto parts store, where you can recycle it. They have catch cans back in the back of the parts stores, and you can just walk this in and drain it into their recycle bin, and they'll take care of it free of charge. So just don't throw it away in the trash. Don't pour it in the backyard. Just throw it in an old can like this and take it to the parts store. All right, going up top, now it's time to fill the oil. Gotta spin the oil fill cap off. In this case, my daughter's helping, and she's gonna add the new oil to the engine. This car takes about 4.4 to 4.5 quarts of oil. So there she is pouring it in. 0W20 on these cars. In this case, I'm using Castrol Edge, full synthetic. And you can pick up a 5-quart container at the Walmart, or in my case, I just ordered it on Amazon because it's actually the same or cheaper, and it's 25 bucks. So now that that's done, go back underneath, put your metal plate back on. Don't strip those screws out, but just tighten them up snug, and we're done. So here it's time to pull the car off the ramps, get the car level, so we can check the oil capacity with the dipstick, and make sure that we got the right amount of oil in the car. You definitely want to do this after you start the car and when the car is level. You don't want to do it on the ramps, because it won't read correctly on the dipstick because of the angle of the car. So here I'm putting my ramps away for another day and getting ready to check the oil with the dipstick to ensure that I got the right capacity. This car's pretty normal as far as about 4.25, 4.5 quarts comes out, and you put 4.25, 4.5 back in, and it's just fine. The car doesn't use any oil to speak of. They all use a little bit of oil, but this one uses very little. In a 3 to 5 to 7,000 mile run between oil changes. So here I'm just cleaning up a little bit. Take some paper towels if you spilled any oil. Get that off the floor in my garage, and clean up to pull the car forward again. It is kind of raining a little bit outside. I think that's what I was looking at there, but pull the car back forward, and let it run just a minute, and then go and check the oil level on the dipstick to ensure that we're full. After you get that done, you got to go inside the car and reset the maintenance warning that comes up. So here you go to maintenance info, says the engine oil needs to be changed. So I go there. It asks you, do you want to reset the maintenance warning? You just hit yes. Resets the oil life to 100%, and that's it.